My name is Evan Amato, and in this series, we explore how Dostoevsky's work and wisdom can guide us to a better understanding of ourselves, our society, and our search for meaning. I'm joined by my friend Elliot Honeycutt, and today we're talking about Dostoevsky's idea of a great mind. The dichotomy that we chose is independence versus plagiarism, and maybe perhaps start this with the idea of plagiarism at the poles and go into what is Dostoevsky's idea of a great mind.
Sure. Dostoevsky's opinion of a great mind is incredibly applicable to our modern age because we live in this knowledge economy, and it's oftentimes incredibly difficult to navigate a sea of knowledge and data. We need to make sense of it all, and as humans, we have a deep-seated desire to piece together data to come up with a narrative, to piece together information to provide us with a story. And Dostoevsky shows us how that can be done. And he's able to create stories that speak to us on an incredibly profound level using the knowledge that was available 150 years ago. And he hits truths which people still have trouble fully understanding today. And so it shows us that actually wisdom can be far more important than knowledge, especially when you're living in a sea of knowledge. He actually calls on Russian folk tales and art as sources of wisdom which can't be arrived at solely through mathematical calculation. And that sort of wisdom is what enables us to live more meaningful lives and to connect with others and to heal divisions within society. So Dostoevsky certainly didn't believe that a great mind was a mind with a vast quantity of facts committed to its memory. What he believed was a great mind seemed to be the mind of an individual that allowed them to transcend their weaknesses and act in the true benefit of humanity. Not in the utilitarian sense, but in the sense of self-sacrifice, charity, and love, which can sometimes seem completely irrational. So he was a tremendous polymath, as we've talked about previously. But rather than being a polymath like Da Vinci, who was able to combine his knowledge of anatomy with his knowledge of psychology and his knowledge of the natural world, Dostoevsky was a polymath who combined understandings of psychology, philosophy, and faith in ways that showed the human dilemma and that helped to shine a light on possibilities for a better, more meaningful life. Yeah.
So how exactly did he integrate that faith with psychology, philosophy, and literature?
Well, I think first to understand how he was able to integrate these different domains, it's useful to understand his background. Dostoevsky's father was initially set to become a clergyman. He came from a long line of clergymen. And at 15, he ran away and enrolled in medical school. Just the age of 15. And he was incredibly bright, very good at his job. He worked his way up and was promoted to be a doctor at the Hospital for the Poor in Moscow. And this was around the time that Dostoevsky was born. So Dostoevsky grew up in the hospital, or right next to the Hospital for the Poor. And despite the fact that his father had a very honorable profession, it wasn't a profession that would necessarily lead to very much money. So the family lived in a precarious social situation. Dostoevsky constantly had to be in tune psychologically with the struggles that his parents were going through as a result of existing on the fringes of one class and a sort of overlap between this Russian educated elite and the lower classes who his father had dedicated his life to serving. So Dostoevsky had a very nuanced view of society, and he also had a nuanced view of all people in Russian society. So this is actually shown in his relation to the peasant serfs in a place called Darovo. And this was a plot of land that his father was able to buy after his father received the title of nobleman. And this was purely a civic title. It really had nothing to do with his father's birth. His father was not a nobleman by birth. He had earned it through his hard work, and that's one of the areas that separates Dostoevsky from all of the other great Russian writers of that time. They were from the landed gentry, and Dostoevsky, he was one of really like the common people, and he could feel the pains of the everyday person, while at the same time understand the heady philosophies that were governing a lot of the members of the intelligentsia, this educated elite. So when his father bought this plot of land in Darovo, Dostoevsky was able to connect on a very deep level with the peasants who lived there. And there are stories of Dostoevsky. There's one story in particular of him running a great distance just to fetch water for this woman who lived on the estate who had a child, and they were thirsty, and he ran just to get water for them. And it showed that he didn't see differences in class. He believed that every person was worthy of respect. And so we see that Dostoevsky had incredible compassion, a deep understanding and empathy. And then through his education, both religious education and also his education in Russian folklore and history and Western literature, he was able to weave together stories that hit at the heart of human nature.
All right. Well, going from that, his nuanced view of society, how does that play into nuance in general and the dichotomy of independence versus plagiarism at the polls, the importance of nuance in creating a great mind?
Yep. So Dostoevsky seems to show us that oftentimes, if we don't understand an idea in terms of its deepest import, it can be incredibly dangerous. And what we find is that people tend to get alienated when they believe in extreme ideas without fully understanding them. So Dostoevsky shows us this in the character of the underground man. He has a very extreme worldview, and this is because he's simply taken the worldview of this radical intelligentsia, and he's decided that he's going to fully believe in all of these presuppositions. But what ends up happening is this tears him apart emotionally, and he lives in a state of continual turmoil. Well, that shows also how people in our incredibly polarized society can often end up taking an extreme view, not because they arrived on it through their own logic and reasoning, but rather because extreme views are the easiest to latch onto.
Hence the term plagiarism at the polls, because when you're at the extremes, you're essentially copying the ideas of others.
Exactly. There's a quote by Razumikin in Crime and Punishment where he basically says, it's better to go wrong in your own way than to err in someone else's, because if you go wrong in your own way, then at least you're human. And one of the things that upset Razumikin so much with regards to his friends was the fact that they would basically just buy into whatever the popular ideas were of the European intellectuals at the time. And Razumikin believed that, yes, it's good to understand those ideas because they could have grains of truth to them. But if you're taking those ideas as your entire worldview, then you're obviously not thinking critically about them. And in our modern world, we need more nuance, because in Dostoevsky's day, there was incredible division. But today, there's even more because we have more ways to be divided and more spheres to be divided in. Our globalized world brings out so much plurality and there's so much incredible diversity, but also because of our negativity bias as humans, because of our fear of the unknown, that can lead, if we don't have full understanding and we aren't actively using our abilities of empathy, can lead to more division. And so Dostoevsky provides us with a way of combating that, and it's through imagination that we arrive at empathy. And again, as I said earlier, Dostoevsky shows us that prejudice is rooted in a small mind, in a failure of the imagination. And Razumikin shows us that what a truly strong intellect will result in, and it's independent thought. It's something that I call vital range rather than lifeless range. Mm-hmm. One of my favorite authors.
Elaborate on that.
One of my favorite authors, David Epstein. He wrote a book called Range, and it's about why generalists succeed in this incredibly complex modern world. And he goes on to elaborate on the topic by showing examples from the world of sports and business and scientific achievement and even modern research that shows the benefits of range. We talked about earlier in the interview this T-shape of knowledge, having knowledge of a wide variety of disciplines while also having one skill that you're very proficient in and that you can connect those disciplines to.
So what's the difference between vital range and lifeless range?
So with vital range, we have not just a wide variety of knowledge, but we have knowledge that's dimensional. We have knowledge that's tied to wisdom. And the definition of wisdom is simply, the psychological definition that I've heard is knowledge that, it's decision-making under context of uncertainty. Knowledge about the chemical composition of like this table, for instance, is always going to be the same. And there's no uncertainty with regards to that knowledge. But wisdom, however, helps us to navigate a world full of uncertainty. And so this vital range is arrived at through making connections between ideas and by thinking through the logical implications of different ideas. It's, in that sense, a very active approach, and it's a creative approach. You're not simply accepting knowledge and regurgitating knowledge. You're taking knowledge in and then trying to think about how it makes sense in this world. And you're using that piece of knowledge as in the same way that an artist would use a single little dab of paint. That piece of knowledge is part of a broader picture. It's not simply something that's isolated and standing on its own. So when we have the opposite of that, we have what I call lifeless or hollow range. And that's effectively what we arrive at if we were to just scroll YouTube all day and memorize what it is people are saying
You
on
absorb
different
information,
channels.
but it's not the type of information that's going to impact your life to a meaningful degree.
Exactly. And we have to not only take in knowledge about the world around us, but think about how that knowledge can be used to make the world better and to help improve ourselves and the way that we see the world. Knowledge can provide us with a tremendous amount of clarity, or it can create intellectual division, or a deep-seated division of a person where their intellect is separated from their emotional state. Raskolnikov, I'd say, had a lifeless range in the beginning of Crime and Punishment. He had a wide variety of knowledge as shown through his research paper that he had done.
Mm-hmm.
However, he wasn't connected to himself at all. He was completely disembodied. He wasn't connected to others, and he hadn't thought through the full import of the ideas that he had floating around in his head. So Raskolnikov shows us the danger of simply assimilating information without really thinking it through, and how someone can be intellectually gifted, yet led astray by all of the dangerous ideas that are out there, because there's nothing more dangerous than understanding 10% of a philosophy. And that's why YouTube, despite being an incredible forum for education, is also dangerous. Because it's so easy to watch 5 minutes of a video and think we understand the entirety of a philosophy.
Mm-hmm. And that's actually relating to politics. Some type of survey was done, and I forget exactly what it was, but it was basically both sides completely mischaracterized or completely misrepresented the position of the other side. It was basically, okay, a conservative, what do you think this liberal person thinks about this? And they always rated it more extreme. This liberal person, what do you think this conservative thinks about this? And they always rated it more extreme. Because it's basically, if you don't watch the news, you're uninformed. If you watch the news, you're misinformed. And it's this, again, understanding 10% of a philosophy, or understanding 10% of a position in politics, it might make you think that, oh, these people are far more extreme than it seems. And we're on both sides, we're starting to act that way.
I couldn't agree more. It's this idea of nuance that just keeps coming up with regards to Dostoevsky's genius. He saw the nuances of the human soul, he saw the nuances of our society, and he saw the nuances of reason and faith. And it was his ability to hold contradictory ideas in mind simultaneously that was such a testament to his genius. So Dostoevsky would never simply accept something, much like Einstein, because it was passed down as an unobjectionable truth or dogma, but rather he saw no fact as sacrosanct, no philosophical system as sacrosanct, and it was by taking that outsider view, by not completely attaching himself or identifying himself with a single philosophy, that he was able to make sense of all of these different philosophies that were floating around at the time. He didn't reject rationality. He didn't reject the importance of science, the importance of an understanding of economics, the importance of the law. What he did, though, was he understood that those had their place, and that reasoning could never explain all of the most important aspects of life. So he's a continual reminder to us of the power of a nuanced understanding, a deep understanding of a topic, for giving that topic its proper context. When you deeply understand the ideas of physics, it's much easier for these ideas to not become your God. Now, I had previously thought that everything could be boiled down to physical laws, but I think that that was in part because I had a shallow understanding of physics despite the fact that I'd studied it in school. I didn't think about the quantum mechanical perspective of free will, of how it was a lot more nuanced than I believed. We weren't simply operating solely in response to environmental factors in combination with our genetics, right? There's more to it than that. We can't predict the path of a cloud because of quantum mechanics. Now, there's uncertainty on the subatomic level, and there's uncertainty on every physical level. And of course, there's going to be uncertainty on the human level, and that's just an example of how that understanding of nuance changed how I saw the relationship of science and faith, and Dostoevsky continually hammers home that point that that in order to develop your mind, you need to develop your ability to see multiple sides.
The genius of nuance.
Exactly.